Sure. All right. Well, yeah. Good evening, everybody. I'm always happy to present, especially when Samantha reaches out to me and asks for something. Samantha and I go back now 6 years, I think it is, knowing each other and working together. But yeah, so everyone, my name is Sean Hammond, and I work at Arizona State Parks and Trails. And specifically, I work out of the State Historic Preservation Office, which is it's just a division, right, within state parks. I've been a parks employee now for as of June. I've been with parks for 12 years. So um, I changed my career and I decided to pursue a career in park service. So I went back to school. And I started out as a ranger at Karshner Cavern State Park. So for those folks listening out there, if you have not visited Arizona, you have to come and visit Karshner Cavern State Park. So I started out there. I then worked in the Grants and Trails Department, and I also managed or oversaw our disabilities program as well. And then in 2018, the Site Steward Program was dealing with a number of challenges, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So Parks asked me if I could take on the Site Steward Program. And so here I am 8 years later. So yeah, I'm excited to talk to all of you tonight. So let's, yeah, go ahead and just get started. So yes, as Samantha said, we are celebrating our 40th anniversary. That date just happened back on June 5th. So it's a pretty special thing to be part of a program and to help oversee and and coordinate a program that has been going on for this long and has had the impact that it has. So, and we'll talk about all that throughout. So how exactly does the Arizona Site Steward Program work? Well, first I will say, for those that know the Nevada program, there's a lot of similarities between the two of us. So, and also Utah, of course, and some other the states that have Site Steward programs. So number one, as I mentioned, the program has been housed at Arizona State Parks for 40 years. And it's the State Historic Preservation Office that manages it. So, and that's a perfect place for the Site Steward Program. I'm surrounded by archaeologists, historians. It's a team of about, I think, 13 of us, but it might be a small team, but it's an amazing team. So best place for the Site Steward Program. Now in Arizona, it's only there's only one paid position, and so that would be my position as the state coordinator. And yes, everyone's aware that the program of this size, right? Arizona Site Steward Program is the largest program in the country, and it's quite a job to manage. But yes, it's been understaffed for a long time. But I'm going to talk about some of the things that we've done to help offset some of the limited staffing that we have. Yeah, we work with our land manager partners, right? Just like you do there in Nevada. Everyone from BLM to Forest Service, National Parks, Bureau of Reclamation. And then also we work with a number of cities, towns, Flagstaff is an example, or Maricopa County, which essentially, covers Phoenix greater area. And then we have some nonprofits, right? Like Archaeology Southwest and the Archaeology Conservancy. So well-rounded group of land owners. Yeah, and then, so the way the program operates, we have our state broken up into 20 regions, and then essentially each region should have a regional coordinator, and a regional coordinator is a volunteer site steward who at some point in time stepped up to take on a lot of responsibilities. And so they oversee the day-to-day operations in each region. When I started out in the program in 2018, we had 25 regions. Over time, though, I realized it's difficult to manage regional coordinators to find volunteers that want to take on those responsibilities, right? Because they do take on a lot of responsibilities. And we had a lot of small regions, right, where we had maybe 25 sites in a region, maybe a dozen site stewards, and so on. So we ended up over the last really 5 years, we've been merging some of our regions, and so we're down to 20 now, which has made a big difference. It means that I have less regional coordinators to have to recruit, train, and work with. So we don't monitor on tribal land, but I'm working with Archaeology Southwest right now on a project to help some area tribes develop their own site steward programs. So that's something that's happening here and will happen in the near future. Yeah, so again, very similar to just all the other site steward programs in the country, right? Our big focus, right, of course, is on site monitoring, right? Regular visits to sites is key, right? Anytime, of course, that regular visitation enables us to see if there's anything that's occurring at the site, right? So that we can report it immediately. Certainly if there's graffiti, any damage, the key is always to get that, and especially with the case of graffiti, to get it removed as quickly as possible, right? Because if you don't, then, right, what happens is that site just keeps getting tagged more and more. So that's our big thing, right? We monitor sites and we report those findings, right? By the way, we monitor 2,500 sites roughly right now in the program. So yeah, we do education and outreach activities. This happens at my level as the state coordinator, all the way down to regional coordinators and individual site stewards that will go out and do community events. We have a lot of site stewards that are that present at various venues and groups. So yeah, we're always trying to be out there in the community to educate the public about preservation, site etiquette, who we are, and so on. Project Archaeology is a youth-based program. Bureau of Land Management started Project Archaeology, I think, about 35 years ago. So we adopted Project Archaeology. It's a curriculum that you take into schools. Actually, what you do is you help provide the curriculum to the teacher. You help the teacher teach the curriculum to the students. And it's a wonderful program. And the Site Steward Foundation, which I'll be talking about in a bit, they adopted Project Archaeology as one of their key activities that they do for the state. So yeah, Project Archaeology, and we've developed some fantastic videos. Foundation members that oversee it are doing some fantastic work. And really, the next stage with Project Archaeology is to recruit more site stewards to help take the program into classrooms, in their communities. So, and then, site mitigation, stabilization, special land manager projects. Our stewards, again, just like all the other site steward programs in the country, we're always doing extra projects for land managers. Of course, everything from graffiti removal to installing new signage, fencing when fencing gets knocked down. You know, we have land managers that ask us to help with recording new sites, right? Of course, we don't do that without, obviously, without supervision of an archaeologist. So yeah, boy, we just do a lot of over the 40 years. My goodness, we've done a lot of extra projects for land managers, and I think it's really a key to the program because, right, our big focus is on monitoring and reporting, but I don't always think that's what's going to keep the majority of your site stewards in the program over a long period of time. It's really, I think, the extra activities, the extra support that stewards can provide to land managers that I think really helps diversify the program and give that interest to site stewards. In fact, one of the really great projects that we did back in December, you know, Arizona, just like the West, is under fire, right? We have fires constantly out here, and we had a major fire last year, and it up near the, well, of course, the Grand Canyon. I think most of you probably heard about the Grand Canyon fire, the North Canyon, and that fire up there, it exposed a lot of sites, and so in December, a handful of site stewards joined the Kaibab National Forest archaeologists and spent 9 days out in quite the elements, snow and rain and the cold, reseeding all this land so that we can help get that grass growing again, and then obviously to help those sites that were uncovered, you know, get back to being covered again, so they're less likely to be looted and so on. So yeah, we love those extra projects. Okay, so let's talk about the history of the program, how the Site Steward Program came to be in Arizona. So first off, the 70s and 80s was a pretty bad period for archaeology site, for cultural sites. The vandalism, the looting, the damage, it's extraordinary to read the stories, the reports that were occurring in the 70s and 80s. So National Park Service did a really impressive report on sites out here in the Four Corners. And this was back in 1985 through 87. So their assessment showed that, you know, 32% of all sites in the Four Corners had been vandalized or looted. 33% had an unknown status, but were potentially affected by vandalism. And only about a third of all recorded sites during this assessment were considered undisturbed. So just let those numbers sink in, right? We're talking about, you know, essentially, you know, 60+%, right, of sites throughout the Four Corners that have been vandalized, and this was in the 80s when this report was done. So yeah, obviously things like this started to trigger a lot of activity within you know, the states out here. So this here kind of just summarizes the blatant looting that was taking place. So Site Steward Program, our newsletter, which the first one was published in 1990. So our first newsletter was 1990. What you're looking at here is, I think you're looking at the second newsletter from 1990. And it's a article that was written in our newsletter about this actor in Hollywood who was an actor on a daytime soap opera show. And he made a lot of money I'm sure, as an actor, but he also made a lot of money by looting sites. And he was very open about it, right? You can see some of his quotes here. I always take advantage of going on a location to find a ruin to dig. He acknowledged that digs are highly expensive, rental of heavy digging equipment. I've seen big ruins, big pueblos with human bones scattered among the pieces of pottery. I mean, this is awful, right? What these individuals were doing back then, and of course, in some cases, still doing it today, right? He even established a mail order business so he could distribute the artifacts that he stole to send throughout the world. So yeah, I read this, this in our newsletter when I was looking at our old newsletters once, and I couldn't believe how out in the open this was. So it's shocking, it's sad, it brings out all the emotions. That was the atmosphere that we had when here in Arizona, Governor Bruce Babbitt was governor in the early 80s, up through the mid 80s. Governor Babbitt, a scientist himself, certainly alarmed at what was happening in Arizona with looting, vandalism, all that. So you have a couple commissions being formed. You have Archaeology Week. The first Archaeology Week in Arizona took place in 1984. And so you start having a lot more emphasis and focus on preservation at that point. It was Governor Bruce Babbitt and his team that thought about this idea that, besides the commissions, besides the archaeologists that we're working with, besides all these organizations that are out there, what about inviting just regular public members into the equation to help protect cultural resources, right? And that is that's the beginning of the Arizona Site Steward Program, is to engage public citizens and having them help assist land managers in protecting cultural sites. So it was now they had done a lot of research. Actually, I learned for the longest time, Samantha, you and I and other site steward coordinators in the country, we talked about how Texas was the first state to have a site steward program. But I found out that South Carolina also had a site steward program before the Arizona program had started. So we've got,
really? Wow.
Yeah, I know. I haven't found a lot of information on it yet, but because we're doing the 40th anniversary right now, right? We have our 40th anniversary. We're working on, and I'll talk more about this later, but we're working on a publication that's going to tell the story of the Site Steward Program in Arizona over the past 40 years. So we're working on that. And yeah, I came across some documents from the 80s that said that, yeah, South Carolina and in Texas, and then we knew that there was some other countries. Canada had up in Canada, they had a site steward program in the west area of the state of the country, and a couple other countries. Australia also had a type of site steward program. So yeah, anyways, the Site Steward Program was officially designated on June 5th, 1986. And of course, like I said, we just passed our 40th anniversary. Yeah, so just a quick timeline of the history of the program, right? So it really grew quickly. We started out with 50 site stewards and 200 sites that we were monitoring. And back then we had 8 land managers, landowners that we were working with, right? we had Forest Service, BLM, Arizona State Land Department. Those are some of the landowners that we worked with back then. Now, I think I've come across information right about this early history. Really, a lot of our site stewards came from the Arizona Archaeology Society chapters, right? So AAS out here in Arizona has a number of chapters, great organization. And so, yeah, they had established chapters back then. And so that's where a lot of site stewards came from. So, yeah, it grew. In fact, by the time we got to 1991, 1992, we went from 50 stewards to 400. So a lot of growth in the program. A couple other milestones that started to occur in the early years of the program. So first, we had a coordinator, a state coordinator position was created. By the way, that state coordinator position was at the time paid by the Arizona legislature. So the Arizona legislature used to fund what is today my position. So we had hired a project coordinator in 1987. Jack Bershaw was his name. He was a doctor, and so he got the program going. And then in 1991, Mary Estes joined the program as the state coordinator. What's really important about Mary ended up being in the position as a coordinator for 18 years, right? So much of what we do today can be traced back to, Mary's foundational work, right? And that's, I think, no doubt, right? When we talk about the sustainability of a program, I have no doubt that 18 years with one coordinator had a lot to do with why the program has survived this long, right? When you're constantly turning over staff, that can be a challenge, right? And we would see that later on in the program, and it did cause major problems. But Mary was there, and she did an incredible job over those 18 years. But early on, we were responsible for a lot of people getting arrested, right? A lot of looters being caught, a lot of vandalism reports being followed up by law enforcement, by land managers, resulting in a lot of arrests. This got the attention of everyone from Senator McCain to other politicians. And ultimately, we received the President George Bush's Points of Light Award, which is a major award, right, given to organizations. And so, yeah, that was our first big award. Others started to follow after that. So, yeah, the program is really starting to garnish a lot of attention. So into the 2000s we go. Like I said, Mary Estes is still with us. But the growth has been incredible up to this point, right? So we have by 2005 we have around 800 site stewards monitoring sites in the program, and at that point we had 1,700 sites. So we went from 200 sites in 1988 to 1,700, right? So again, just incredible growth. However, by 2009, right, the United States is in an economic crisis, and the states are having to bail on a lot of programs. Of course, here at state parks, we had to shut down some parks. It was a very difficult period for a lot of us, and a lot of the agencies that we work with. So Mary ended up retiring, but the state had cut funding, so they had stopped funding the Site Steward Program. And as of today, the state has never gone back to supporting this very important program. So yeah, 2009 ended a lot of things. Now, we were lucky. Federal land managers stepped in, and of course, we had already been getting funding from BLM, Forest Service. At this time, we started getting funding from Luke Air Force Base, and some other agencies. I believe Bureau of Reclamation goes back to the late 2000s and so on. So 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. So yeah, so we were at least getting that funding to keep us going, right? Now, state parks had to, with the legislature not supporting the funding anymore, state parks had to take on the salary, right, for the staff person. So that's one of the big things that state parks, obviously contributed to the program, was paying that position, whereas the land managers helped us, right, with all the other program costs that generally come with a program like ours. Yeah, so other milestones. The big one really for me, I think, is in 2017, the Arizona Site Steward Foundation was established. And we're going to talk much more about the foundation in just a bit. But I can tell you, with all the funding cuts that's happening in the United States now, and all the threats of more funding cuts, the foundation is everything to our program right now. But they started off in 2017, 501c3. And I'd mentioned earlier, one of the things that they did is they adopted project archaeology as a project. And since 2017, the Site Steward Foundation has contributed around $50,000 just in conferences and trainings expenses. So, and there's much more to it than that, but those are just some of the highlights that the foundation has done in 10 years or 9 years now. So, all right. So today, right? So we're up to today, 2026. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary, which is very exciting. We have a lot of stuff lined up for it. We're actually doing things right now too, and we got a big event coming up in November. So now we have right now, we're down to about 525 site stewards. That's okay, right? We saw earlier that we had up to 800 site stewards. Now, I can't speak for the site stewards when we had 800 site stewards. I know that when I joined the program in 2018, we had about 700 plus site stewards in the program. But what I found is that about 200 people, maybe 150, weren't reporting on a regular basis. And this is a problem, I think, in most site steward programs, is the challenge that we have with a percentage of our volunteers who, despite everything that you talk to them about, it just doesn't matter. They just don't want to report. Right now, it could be the database is very hard, which is our case here in Arizona. But geez, even when we try to make it easy, it's a challenge. And this is something that Samantha and I and our other partners have talked about in the past. But so I recognize the numbers I give out are based on the reporting that's taking place, like say over the last 2 years, right? So the last 2 years on average, we've had about 500 roughly site stewards that have reported hours. So that's the number. So that's another reason why our number is a little bit down. Also, our program has gotten so big, right? And we still have just the one coordinator position, right? Myself, right? So the program's gotten so much bigger than it was, 20 years ago, and certainly 30 years ago, but there's still just one paid staff member. So A couple of things that we've looked at doing over the past few years is to try to right size the program. You know, we aren't taking applications on every day or just it's open. We have periods where we'll go a couple months without taking on applications. It's just a matter of making sure that we're managing the program as best as we can. And so yeah, so we've reduced the number of stewards that we probably had in the past. So yeah, we have 20 land managers, and then funding right now the big problem is that the funding that we got from our federal governments, our federal agencies, I should say, they're not funding us right now except for BLM. And that's a big thing because it's really hurting us right now. But the foundation, BLM is supporting us by paying for an intern, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, the foundation, again, I mentioned this earlier, it's the key for us right now. And it's something that I encourage all site steward programs to develop, right? But we'll talk more about that. All right, yeah, let's look at the numbers, right? Over 40 years, 6,000 plus trained volunteers in 40 years. Of that 6,000, right now in the program, right, 2026, July, what are we into? July 10th? We have 10 site stewards that have been in the program for 30 plus years. It's just an amazing group, right? And then we have more than 50 site stewards that have been in the program for 20 years too. So, but yeah, that 30-year club, that's amazing. One of our site stewards, Darlene Brinkerhoff, she's on 36 years right now. So she was there almost from the beginning. Yeah, there we go. Darlene, I got Darlene on there. Yeah. 600,000 estimated hours have been contributed. Now we have data that that goes back to 2008 when we first started using online databases. Previous data I have not found. You know, it would have been paper-based, or someone might have put it on a computer, but I just don't have that information, never had. However, we are going back through all of our site steward newsletters, the Watch, and we are slowly finding hours from each year. But yeah, over 600,000. And by the time we're done with going through all of our newsletters, it might be up to 700,000, because I initially thought maybe we were getting 5,000 hours in the early 90s, but I found a Watch newsletter that said that stewards had volunteered 10,000 hours, and that was in 92. So they were already volunteering a lot of hours. Today, the average over 5 years is around 20,000 hours. And some of these numbers are just staggering, right? 50 million miles put on site stewards' vehicles, right, to help protect cultural resources. Roughly 118,000 site visits have been logged, and around 5,000 reports of damage, vandalism, and looting. All right, so what are some of the things that helped this program survive, right? Especially the first 10, 15 years, I would say. Number one, so the leadership, right? I think Samantha has research on this that shows that states that support a site steward program are much more likely to succeed and have a greater impact. I don't know, Samantha, if you can chime in there.
Yeah, it's true. And actually, we found that the states especially the programs that are in SHPOs, have the most impact because they have connections to all of the agencies and everybody. There's a little level of trust with SHPOs. And so the others have to kind of fight for their position with the different land managers, and states with SHPOs tend to have more consistency on that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly what I see here, right? Because I do turn to my coworkers quite a bit for assistance, and certainly, the SHPO officer, Catherine Leonard here in Arizona, and my direct supervisor, Mary Ellen Walsh. They they do things that some amazing things that help the Site Steward program. But when I first started the Site Steward program, it had gone back and forth between SHPO and State Parks Management. And so when I first took on the program in 2018, it was under Parks Management. But I found myself having to constantly talk with to SHPO and to talk to my SHPO counterparts. So and I asked if we could move the program back, and Catherine agreed to that, and it's made a world of a difference. So yeah, so having a state agency, right, like state parks and SHPO, is a key. And then have that central leadership, right, as opposed to having fragmented organizations, right, in a state. I mentioned about we had two early really exceptional coordinators, right? And then the regional coordinators, right? So that's how the program. That's one of the key parts of this program is those regional coordinators, right? They handle the day-to-day activities. They interview the new applicants that come on. Of course, they review the application, they interview, and then they mentor them, right? They bring them on. They take them out to visit their sites, things like that. And so they're there to troubleshoot issues. They work closely with the land managers. They handle a lot of administrative work. So yeah, as I said, backbone of the program. They really are the key to what we do here in Arizona. Funding support, right? So again, early on, we had the Arizona State Legislature that funded my position, what is today my position. So that was key back then. And of course, we had our federal agencies. And I just learned that we actually had a Friends of the Site Steward Program back in the early 90s. So they were there helping to raise some money too as well. So communication, right? Now, quarterly newsletters are difficult to produce when it's just you and maybe an intern, right? Or you have some you get some help from some staff, but they are not easy to publish, right? You're talking about trying to put together articles that cover the whole state, right? Stay up on what's happening in the archaeology world, right? You're documenting everything, but they are absolutely key, I think, to a program. As hard as they are, to me that they're a necessity. And I will say this: thankfully, we've been doing quarterly newsletters, or sometimes it wasn't always quarterly. Maybe sometimes there'd be 3 in a year, or sometimes 2. But we've had about 80 newsletters published in our program in over 30 plus years. So, but we're doing for our 40th anniversary, we are putting together this publication to tell the story of the Site Steward program, and so we're going through our newsletters, our old newsletters, and this is where we're pulling out a lot of information that we didn't know about. So they not only are they important to keep your site stewards right up to date on what's happening in the program, but from a historical standpoint, thank goodness we have these because they're helping to tell our story. But yeah, I'll talk. Well, I guess I could talk about it now. As I said, quarterly newsletters are very time consuming. And I struggled definitely to get, 2 and 3 out. And so what we ended up doing is I had I had met a social media content creator and a journalist who was working for the Verde Valley Archaeology Center, and she handles their social media and their newsletter. And so what we ended up doing is the foundation hired her. So basically just a contract, real simple, straightforward. And so for the past year and a half now, her name's Alyssa. She has been helping me, and we built a little team for the newsletter, including my intern and one of my coworkers. And so we're now publishing our quarterly newspapers, and they really have become really exceptional newsletters. So that's one way in which we have, which we found a way to help make sure we get newsletters done and out there to our site stewards, right? And keep in mind with newsletters, we have a whole state, right? When you're a centralized agency like we are, Nevada and Utah and so on, you're trying to let stewards who, almost all the stewards that monitor the sites along the Arizona-Utah border, for example, almost all of them live in Utah, right? And then we have site stewards all the way down in Bisbee, Arizona, right? And so they're all over this large state. And so to me, the newsletters are really important. The other thing too is statewide conferences. So we've been doing statewide conferences in the Site Steward Program since 1991. In fact, you can see that little logo that was created right back then. They called it a powwow. But the first Site Steward Conference took place in 1991 in Tucson. And we've been holding them ever since. Now, we did make a switch. Of course, in 2020, we had to cancel our statewide conference, but then we picked it back up in 2021 and 2023. But we're doing statewide conferences every 2 years now. And then in between, we're doing regional conferences. So in fact, one of the regional conferences we did, which was one of my favorites, was Samantha and Ian Wright at the time up in Utah. The three of us partnered, and we held the first known tri-state site steward regional training. So we all met in Kanab, Utah, and we all provided workshops, sessions, activities over a 2-day period. It was absolutely wonderful. And so, yeah, so that's what we do in between those years when we're not doing the statewide conference. Our next one is going to be next year, 2027. Those are really important for so many reasons, right? They're bringing stewards all from all over the state. It's opportunity to provide exceptional training. Those conferences do cost quite a bit of money, but they're worth it. They're worth it, especially when you have a centralized program like ours. The other thing really too that helped bind this program, I can only imagine the excitement of those early site stewards being in this program, right? I mean, I see the excitement of site stewards joining the program now, right? But boy, back then when there was so many problems with looting and damage, it just must have been terribly exciting. So that belief that you were truly doing something that was going to have an impact, I think, was so strong among stewards. Those first, and that's what we're hearing from some of our stewards who've been in the program for a long time. So, yeah, that unified community, right, that was dedicated to protecting cultural resources was strong. These are the things I think had a lot to do with why our program has been able to sustain itself for so long. Certainly to lay the foundation of the program in those first 10 plus years. Samantha, how are we doing on time? Because we have, is it 2 hours tonight? Or, I mean, I don't want to talk for 2 hours, but.
Usually an hour, but you can go a little bit over if you want to.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Let me get through some stuff here. We'll pick it up. All right. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about the Arizona Site Steward Foundation, right? Because this is a key part of the sustainability of the program now, today, right? Created in 2017. Now, in 2017, things were pretty tough with the Site Steward Program. We had management at parks that we weren't quite sure where their support was for the program. A lot of site stewards are very concerned. Also, we had gone from Mary Estes, who had been the coordinator for 18 years, to suddenly having 5 site steward coordinators over, basically a 7-year period. So it was constant change. Site stewards were very frustrated, very upset. They felt like they weren't being supported. And then 2017 is when we started seeing those major federal funding cuts, right? So we had lost our funding from the Bureau of Reclamation, from United States Forest Service, and BLM. So when I came on board in May of 2018, all those grants had dried up, with the exception of we had an active grant with Luke Air Force Base, who had been funding us for about at least a decade at that point. It was $10,000 that we had. That was it to run a program that is this large, right? So what ended up happening is that one of former state parks employees, who also helped oversee the Site Steward Program, Nicole Armstrong Best, she had left parks to go, and she's the director of Pueblo Grande Museum in Phoenix. Today it's called the Sotovaki Museum. If for folks out there, next time you travel to Phoenix, please go down to the Sotovaki Museum. It's really a beautiful place, extraordinary. There's a platform mound there, a very large holocron platform mound, ball court. It's a wonderful educational experience. So yeah. Anyways, Nicole helped lead that effort to create the Site Steward Foundation. She's pretty special. She really knows what she's doing. She gets things done, and she was the key. So early on, having her oversee the foundation really was important. And then the foundation at that point had it was very concerned people in the Site Steward Program. They were very concerned about the future of the Site Steward Program. They weren't sure if it was going to be cut. And so it was stewards, some land managers, some RCs, that were very concerned. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how the foundation works. So again, created in 2017. So the board can have, it has to have at least 5 members, and it can go up to 19 board members. You're elected for a 2-year term, and you can serve a maximum of 8 consecutive years in service. Now the officers are the chair, and Nicole Nicole just stepped down on June 30th, after serving actually just over 8 years, I guess it was 9. Oh, I think it was actually 9, but we didn't get a chance to, or they didn't get a chance to elect a board member until June. But we have a new board member, Dave Sauge. Dave has been an RC for over a decade in the Site Steward Program. And so he's a great addition to the chair. But Nicole got it started. Nicole laid the foundation, and others did too as well. So Jerry Meeks, we just had a number of good people that helped get the program, or helped get the foundation settled, because it's not easy, right? Those first few years were tough, trying to figure out what what role they were serving and things like that. So, but anyways, just more specifics. So officers are limited to 8 consecutive years per position, required to meet at least 4 times per year, but our board members meet monthly. We just have a lot going on, so it's pretty important we meet monthly. Initial challenges, as I said, if a state or if a site steward program, doesn't have to be state run, but if a site steward program wants to start a foundation or help get one going, it's going to be, I expect it would be a challenge in the beginning, just like it was for the foundation, for the Site Steward Foundation. First, right, what is the coming up with a clear mission, goals. Also, as I mentioned, it was a number of very concerned site stewards and program members, right? But we didn't have a lot of expertise in fundraising, getting those donors and those corporate sponsors, right? So that was a big challenge, and that actually lasted until recently. So when you're trying to build your foundation early on, you got to try to recruit folks that know how to write grants and fundraise. Now, a couple of our members did know how to do that, including Nicole. She's very good at that, of course. But it was the time commitment for the chair, right? Nicole, in her case, she's running a museum and being the chair of the Site Steward Foundation. Takes a lot of time to get the foundation going. So for those that might be looking at creating a foundation, right away, do your best to recruit someone that can help do those sponsorships, write grants and things like that. That's a big part of a successful foundation, of course, right? Because that's one of their main goals, raising money for the program. So, and then identity. It's still working on it, but it's amazing how all these years, some site stewards still don't know what the foundation does. But we take every opportunity, right, in our newsletters and emails, now social media posts, to educate our own site stewards about the foundation and its importance to the program. So those are all challenges that are difficult at the beginning and actually continue. Now, we had some early successes, which was great. We had a couple people that gave us legacy gifts, right? So they put us in their will, which was really, really special. I remember the first one that came in, I just thought, wow, this person actively kept us in mind. And so we had a few of those, and we continue to get some of those. We had some individual donations. We had a couple of our cultural resource management firms that supported us in those early days as well. And then I had developed a relationship with Avenza Mapping. We were working on a project together back then. And I invited them to come to this Site Steward Grand Canyon conference we had in 2019. They weren't able to attend, so they sent me an email and said, "Sean, can we give you a donation instead?" And it was unsolicited, right? I would just wanted them to come out and teach stewards how to read maps and use Avenza. So that was awesome, right? So little things like that started to happen. Like I said, Westlands Resources, cultural resource firm. So and I will say, that early funding enabled us to have what many people will consider the best Site Steward conference ever held, and that was our 2019 Site Steward Conference of the Grand Canyon. I selected the Grand Canyon because when I came on board, like I said, there was a lot of frustration in the program. People felt abandoned. They felt like we were ignoring them. There was just a lot of fraction and friction. And so I thought, for the first conference I'm going to coordinate, we need to find a way to bridge and rebuild this bridge here between the state coordinator, in this case me, and the program with our site stewards. And so the Grand Canyon was selected because what a place to have a conference, right, at the Grand Canyon. We again, being part of SHPO, Catherine Leonard had a contact at the Grand Canyon in their Cultural Resources Department. And so when we went up for our first meeting to meet with staff, they gave us, they passed out this piece of paper, and it had 14 absolutely fantastic workshops that they had already laid out they would do for us, right? I couldn't believe it. I thought we were going to have to create most of these workshops and come up with the ideas. Nope. The Grand Canyon folks did it for us, and it was a magical event. It was really absolutely wonderful. We still talk about it. Site stewards still talk about it. It was a big deal for our program because we were going through some tough times. And so, yeah, keep in mind those conferences can really do some wonders. And of course, it's excellent training. Hang on here for a second. Let's see. Okay, so last few things that I wanted to talk about is, right, because we're talking about sustainability, right, keeping the program going and everything like that, right? One of the things I wanted to kind of shift gears on is one of the things that Site Steward programs need to do, right, especially like what we have with the Arizona program, right? It's been 40 years now. So there's a lot of things that have been laid out that we've been doing for 40 years. And some things haven't changed. Of course, some things have. Some of the things that haven't changed could be for the good, but for us moving forward, right, we have our foundation that's working very hard on securing funding, right? But as a program, I think as a program, we need to really have these conversations about what is now happening in particular in the West with protecting our cultural resources, right? So what's impacting our sites today? So obviously many of you already know the answers to this, right? Over-visitation is one of the biggest problems that we're having in certain areas of the state. Sedona is ground zero for people visiting sites in the thousands, when just 10 years ago that wasn't the case. South Mountain and Phoenix and some other sites in Phoenix, same thing. People are just loving these sites to death. So we need to start asking questions about what do we need to do to address overvisitation, right? Obviously, most things with overvisitation have to be handled by the land managers, but what can site steward programs do to help, right? Site disclosure, right? So, those of us that run site steward programs today, what is one of our unique challenges that you didn't have really even like 6-7 years ago, is social media folks posting the location of sites on social media, right? So that's a big problem. How do we respond to that, right? Do we do we have do we respond angrily to people that make these posts about stealing things or posting the location of sites, right? But what approach do we take, right? So these are discussions that each program needs to have, and also amongst ourselves as regions, right, out here in the West, because we all deal with similar situations. Funding cuts, right? Yeah, so drastic funding cuts. I think most of you realize or know that, for example, the Historic Preservation Fund, which National Parks manages that fund, right? That federal fund, that's offshore oil drilling revenue, right? It's not even taxpayer money, but it's being left out of the administration's budget, right? We're talking about, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have the total numbers, but it's a lot of money. I think it's close to, I don't want to say it, but it's well over $100 million. Let's just say that, right? This is what supports state historic preservation offices, all of them, and tribal historic preservation offices. And we're talking about getting rid of something that's not even taxpayer funding, right? So that's going to have an enormous impact if it goes through, if it does happen, right? And I can just tell you right now, I can't imagine the Site Steward Program would survive if Historic Preservation Fund was cut. So, anyway, so yeah, so we're really dealing with some scary things right now with funding, but that goes back to what our foundation is doing. So they're best at. The other thing is constant wildfires, right? We have, it's a big problem, right? So we have thousands of sites that are being exposed because of fires, right? So how do we address that as well as a program? So yeah, so let's talk about some of those current challenges, right? I mentioned about, okay, so Boynton Canyon has multiple sites in it, and it's in Sedona, and 8 years ago, 7-8 years ago, there was only a few visitors that were hiking along these trails in Boynton Canyon. But then one day somebody posted a lot of information about it, posted location, they posted information about the sites, and suddenly traffic started to pick up. Then more people kept posting and more people kept posting. And an area that used to only see a handful of visitors a week is now getting over 1,000 visitors a week. And the single track trail that used to take people through this canyon in many areas is now 10 plus feet wide, right? So it's wiping out vegetation, trees, and then people are visiting the site are causing a lot of damage, right? There's like vandalism there monthly in that area, right? This all started out with people posting information online about it. This situation that you're looking up here right now, this one is perfect example. An off-highway vehicle group. We have these ovens, as you can see them, right, called the coke ovens, that were built late 1800s, I believe. And anyways, but they were on private property. But recently, it was transferred to BLM. So BLM management took over this area that has these ovens, right? And so somebody from an off-highway vehicle group posted online that BLM now manages the site, and it's no longer on private property, right? So go out and explore. 2 days later, right, these two young men here, they were part of a church group, an off-highway vehicle group that was part of a church. And what they do, they got caught vandalizing inside. Yeah, that's just tells you right there what happens with publishing location of sites, right? So there's a lot of work to be done in educating people. Yeah, okay, yeah, here we go. Here's the Boynton Canyon example, right? Oh, yeah, let me, one of the things that we've been working on for 2 years now, partly because it takes a long time for me to get things done, is we have a wonderful filmmaker who's a site steward who joined our program. She's made international films, really amazing. Her name's Kirsten Chase. And, we talked about 4 years ago, we started talking about film projects for the Site Steward Program. One of the things we wanted to do was we wanted to put a spotlight on vandalism and looting, right? Most people don't talk about it. Most people don't think it really happens. And we thought, you know what, we need legislators to know about this. We need more agencies, more people to get involved in protecting cultural resources. So we've been filming at locations throughout the state on different ways in which vandalism or looting is occurring at sites, right? Everything from, site being tagged with graffiti to an area where mountain bikers have taken over a large area with villages in it and have created upwards of 60 miles of trails, illegal trails. So yeah, so we've been filming all over. This particular clip, I'm just going to show you just about 2 minutes of it, is from our Sedona clip, which will be part of the film. But yeah, let me show you. Okay. Real quick, Samantha, can you hear that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, all right. So I'm just going to show like the first minute, and then I'm going to skip to the end. All right.
So the site we're at today is commonly known as V-Bar V Ranch. Pretty soon we're going to change the name to the Crane Petroglyph Site. So originally this petroglyph site was studied and protected while this was private ranching property. But eventually through lots of land exchanges, it changed hands to the Forest Service and became our site to protect and interpret and study. And so what you see on the wall is thousands of years of markings of stories being told, communication being passed down through generations. The majority of the markings are from the Sanawa cultural period from about 650 to 1420. And what makes this site really unique and why we try to showcase it and display it as a public site rather than an unmarked archaeological site is its significance with its solar calendar. The sun comes through that cliff wall and strikes rocks that have been placed above me, and the shadow striking, it strikes different circles that have been marked into the stone, and that can tell us what time of year it is, planting, harvesting, time for rest and storytelling. There's all kinds of
Okay, I'm going to skip a little bit ahead and just show you a few things here. We're going to go to, we're going to go to Boynton Canyon real quick now.
Geological formation that was featured in 2020 on social media. And so the person that posted it and geolocated it wasn't intending to geolocate an archaeological site as well. But this canyon's riddled with sites. And so because of that geolocation and the popularity of that geological formation, those archaeological sites are now at risk. And what used to be a small, what looked like a game trail where you're only having deer and javelina and bears come through, now you can see it's about 10, 12 feet wide with a stone arrow that someone has, maybe in a generous intent, pointed towards this place, but I don't think they realize that what they're doing is pointing people towards an area that is being degraded at a really high rate.
We've counted 200 to 300 people a day going to a site that just a few years ago wasn't even known about or visited. And furthermore, there's some wonderful pictographs, paintings that, you know, one of them is a turtle that's 3 feet large. It's a beautiful pictograph that we're trying to preserve, but unfortunately, the more people that go there, some want to vandalize it. And we've actually did some graffiti remediation out there just a couple months ago.
Visiting archaeological sites off of designated trails, it's not against the law.
Okay, so again, just for timing, I'm going to skip to, so, you know, we have site stewards, we have folks in the Sedona area that friends of the forest and a land manager talking about all these issues. So I just want to show you the last piece here, because you might have noticed that people were walking by as we were talking. So let's see if this is it.
The intent is to share. And so we just have to ask ourselves when we're posting those photos, new trails, is why are we doing this? Why are we sharing this information? And what could be the ripple effect?
Well, during this presentation, you've noticed the number of visitors walking back and forth behind us, and that's all effect of social media that 3 years ago, people were not coming out to this social trail.
No, and it was a designated trail.
Okay.
Sean, can we start to wrap up?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so yeah, other challenges we're dealing with. Take a look at this data that State Parks collected, right? In 2015, there was about 40% of the adult public that that would go out on trails. Today, it's 64%. I mean, that's awesome, right? It means people are going out and enjoying outdoor recreation. But boy, it's also putting a stress on our cultural resources, right?
It is.
So if you don't have site steward programs, right, then who's going to be reporting all this impact, right? But look at motorized. This is the big one, right? 13% of the public, it's almost up to 30% now, right? And we know what OHVs can do. So yeah, so a couple things that we should be doing and we are starting to do, right? Is number one, change is never easy, right? Especially in a program that's 40 years old and still has site stewards that have been in it for 20, 30 years, right? Our program has always been based on, we're hiding, in the bushes, right? We're staying out of the public's eye when we're out there in the field, right? Yes, back in the early days, we were always catching oftentimes seeing people actively vandalizing sites, and you had some very dangerous people out there. You certainly still have dangerous people out there today. But, you know, in the past 15 years, we only have about a dozen or so reports of people actually vandalizing a site and being caught, you know, by a site steward. So that number's come down quite a bit, right? We have to be more visible. I love what Utah did, right? They changed, right? They adapted, right? Because education is needed more than ever now, especially with all the visitors out there. So this is something that we're going to be talking to our site stewards about here over the course of the next 6 months. Is it's time for us to, you know, to be out there engaging people. And I will tell you this right now, a lot of our stewards are already doing this, right? Some of them though are reluctant, right? They think that we you know, kind of still should be hiding. But I think the key to our program and the key to helping protect cultural resources and what we can do as a program is we need to be more invisible out there. I love what Utah does. The stewards have a uniform. In this case, they you know, a lot of them wear hats that say their Site Steward Program. The other key is having a foundation, right, to support you, especially with all these problems. And the other thing is having an active social media presence, which we finally, it took years, but we finally have one going on. And I'll just share with you some of those posts here. So, so the foundation, it's on Facebook too, but it's also on Instagram. Here's a couple. Here's a personal favorite of mine because I helped develop this. Although most of them are developed by my coworker Caroline, and then also our social media content person Alyssa, and then my intern. But this one was kind of fun because I'm a big soccer football fan, right? So we combine, right, the excitement of the World Cup with, you know, letting people know, hey, games have been played in the West for thousands of years. So yeah, so these are little posts that we're doing weekly now, right? So we talk about Ocon ball courts, the uniqueness of them, and so on. That site stewards have been protecting them, right? We have our original land managers. We did a post last week of that. We had a little thing connecting Stonehenge with June 21st. You know, and then we're also, because it's the 40th anniversary, we're also talking about the history of the program, right? So we have a lot of posts on that. We're posting when site stewards go out and help do work. This has been wonderful, right? This has been wonderful that we finally have this. So yeah, please follow us, right? Please follow, you know, it's the Site Steward Foundation that's leading this effort. So just type in Site Steward Foundation in Facebook, or ASSP, Arizona Site Steward Program .foundation when you're in Instagram.
Sean?
And yeah, I think that's it for me. Yep.
Sean, that's one of the things that we are just going to start doing next week.
Awesome. Yeah. And you know what? Here's the thing. Have fun with it, right? Have fun with it. Incorporate things that are happening now, like what we do with the World Cup, right? Celebrate your program's history. Put a spotlight on your stewards, your regional coordinators, your land managers, right? Yeah. I'm so grateful that we finally have a social media presence. So, yeah. Well, you know, there's 40 years of of history of things that have happened and things that are happening. So, yeah. Questions, ask away. No questions.
You'll see them in the chat. Actually,
Oh.
There's several people.
Okay, let me look at chat.
So,
you know what? I'm not seeing any chat. Oh, here we go. What is your favorite part of your job? Yeah, it's the friendships that I built with site stewards. I've gotten to be very close with a number of my site stewards, and yeah, really special relationships. Yeah, good question. Thanks, Art.
A couple more coming through.
How easy is it for you to recruit and retain stewards? Well, let's just say this. We don't really even have to advertise to recruit stewards. It's constant. Now, I will say this. We do have challenges recruiting stewards in some of the more rural areas of the state, right? I mean, Lake Havasu is interestingly a tough place for us to recruit stewards. So a couple things that we're doing, our RC in Lake Havasu region, she writes letters to the editor, or she recently had an article about the Site Steward Program. We post flyers up at some of the museums and the BLM office. So we look at targeted recruitment, but overall though, we actually get more volunteers than we can handle. Yeah. And then retaining stewards, you know, to me, the most important part about retaining stewards is that first year, you have to make sure that stewards feel like they're getting mentored, right? That they're not suddenly out there on their own. We actually created a position solely called a Site Steward Mentor. So we did this about 4 or 5 years ago, and because I had some longtime stewards who loved taking new stewards out, and they were very good at it, right? And so it gave me the idea, let's create a Site Steward Mentor, and so try to get that in most of our regions, and these folks help, you know, take those new stewards under their wings and get them involved early on. Yeah. What draws volunteers to the program and what tends to lead them to depart? Well, outdoor recreation, right? Folks are getting to be outdoors, and so being active, and it's for a good reason, right? And of course, one of our jobs as the coordinators is to make sure that we, you know, really do a good job of educating site stewards up front, right? Their applicants during their training, of course, about why the work they're doing is so important. And we put a lot of emphasis on that when we revised our curriculum. It was a 2-year project, and we went to an e-learning platform, which is fantastic because all site stewards are now getting uniform training. But yeah, I think that's the key. But yeah, stewards feel like they're giving back, and they are. They're contributing to a very important, very important work. Now, what tends to lead them to depart? Yeah, I think a couple things. As much as I like to think that, you know, I'm doing a great job, fact is that having a limited, right, staff support, right, makes it difficult for me, right, to bring the stewards on quickly sometimes, right? So some folks will wait for months or so. And so I think that happens in our program. You know, you have to have good RCs, regional coordinators, right, that keep stewards involved. You know, our best regions are regions in which the RCs are communicating often with their stewards, right? It could be a monthly Zoom call. It could be a newsletter. It could be taking folks out on group hikes, and so on. But, you know, I think people that come into the program and then they suddenly are on their own, right? I think that's the other part that makes them leave. Yeah. Yeah, good question.
Oh.
Yeah, okay, so good one. What initiatives or new projects are you looking forward to going forward. Yeah. So let me talk more about our 40th anniversary stuff that we got going on. So I showed you an example of our social media posts, right? I also alluded to it earlier. We are putting together a publication that will tell the story of the Site Steward Program, its impact, right? And yeah, just an overview of the things we've done and our importance, right? Now, it's not going to be a book, right? Although I will say this, if any of our site stewards or authors want to write a book about the Site Steward Program, yeah, I'd love to hear from them, because 40 years, there's a lot of stuff that they could write about, right? But we're going to try to keep our publication at 40 slides or less, right? So, but it's exciting because I'm going through all these old documents. The team that we have that's working on this project, we're just picking up things that we didn't know about or hadn't heard about. So that's really a lot of fun. And this publication, what's really important about this publication that will come out sometime in September, is that we'll share it with legislators, we'll share it with department heads, of course, all the site stewards. So yeah, that's one of our things we're doing for the 40th anniversary as well. The other big thing that we're doing, which just essentially just got confirmed this week, is so we're holding a special event on November 6th here in the Phoenix area at a wonderful resort that the Gila Indian tribe community manages, and it's called the Gila River Resorts Wild Horse Pass. And it's for those that know Phoenix, it's at the south end of Phoenix. So you come up from Tucson, you come right to the edge of Phoenix, it's right there. So we're going to have some wonderful activities at this event. We're also going to have the world premiere of our film. Our film ultimately is going to be under an hour. We're going to show about 25 minutes of the film at this event. And so we're looking forward to that. We're going to have some special guests. We're hoping for a couple folks that with big names coming. So yeah, really looking forward to that. The other projects that we're working on, about 3 years ago, we started working on our site kits. So land managers were responsible for site kits for the longest time. But when I came on board in 2018, our site kits were so outdated. Old maps. In fact, when I would look at some of the site kits, I couldn't tell where the site was, right? Old UTMs, they were really a mess. And it's understandable. Land managers just their staffing keeps getting cut, add more duties. They just don't have time to keep up with site kits. So we decided that we were going to do this like 4 or 5 year project and update the site kits. So we're in the middle of that. We've RCs have done obviously the ton of the work. We have about, of the 2,500 sites, we have about maybe 1,400 site kits that have been made now. We're getting new UTMs, all that. And yeah, so that's a big project.
Sean, so I'm going to, just because I haven't told you, but I should tell you, you have 3 people who are in this, one of which is my boss, who's asking awesome. A bunch of questions, as well as 2 of my regional coordinators who actually work really hard to help us with our site kits. So they're all very familiar with them, yeah. But they also all know why it needs to be so well organized and why they're so important.
Yes. Yeah. Let's see, wait a minute. I know you told me the name, but I'm forgetting it. Is it Nicholas? That's your boss?
No, Art.
Oh, Art. Oh, okay. Well, hello, Art. Yeah, that's right. Art, you are, you know, my boss, don't you, Catherine? Yeah, I've heard some really nice things about you, Art. So I'm glad you're on board. And Art, by the way, you know, the invitation is going to go out for this event. So it's going to go to you guys. So I hope you can come to our 40th anniversary celebration. By the way, the we're working on a special deal with the resort. They are actually, it looks like they're going to comp just about the entire event.
Awesome.
For us. And they're also going to give us special rates on lodging at the resort. And so, you know, we're going to package it as an opportunity for folks to come spend the weekend in Phoenix and, you know, and celebrate the Site Steward Program and all that. So, yeah, we save that date. We'd love to have you guys come.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna have to wrap it up now.
Yeah, of course.
But thank you so much for coming and talking and telling us all about your program and what you guys are doing. It's amazing. I wish, like, there's so many things I wish I could do, but also there's so many great ideas. I've been taking notes the whole time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I you know, Art, I don't know how much Samantha's told you, but, you know, our little friendship and collaboration has just been enormous. You know, we both give each other great ideas, and we share a lot of our information. A lot of our curriculum has content from, you know, from the Nevada program, for example. So, yeah. Anyways, take it over, Samantha.
Okay. Thanks everybody for coming, and thank you, Sean, so much for talking. This will be, the video will be out in about a week or so on our NBFCP Facebook page. And I will I'll probably recommend it to all of our stewards as well through some of our announcements and stuff. But thank you. And yeah, I really do appreciate our collaboration as well, because that has been very, very helpful for me and for our program in general. So thanks.